In the southwest portion of the United States, there lies a vast area of 130,000 square miles encompassing portions of the states of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. Within this region is the nation's greatest concentration of national parks, monuments, cultural treasures, and a variety of other natural features. It is called the Grand Circle. The Grand Circle is a 1,400-mile journey within a region defined as the Colorado Plateau. Its complex geological history goes back 500 million years to the formation of the Rocky Mountains. The plateau's evolution spans eons, its climates alternating between wet and dry cycles. The landscape would evolve from dense forests to immense arid deserts. For the most part, it is a land better suited for the lizard, raven, snake, and desert bighorn. Ancient peoples watered their crops from trickling desert streams, lived in rock houses under desert cliffs, and struggled for survival. But today we can easily travel to this highly scenic area to visit, learn, and enjoy the majestic beauty of one of the most startling landscapes on our earth. Zion was established in 1909 as Makuntaweep National Monument, and in 1919 became one of our nation's premier national parks. Approaching from the southwest, the highway runs beside the peaceful Virgin River. Enormous Zion Canyon, with its towering 3,000-foot walls, boldly reflects the monumental forces of nature at work. Around the turn of the century, this old cable structure was used to lower lumber to the canyon floor. Far below, the faint line of the Virgin River weaves its way along the canyon floor. Beautiful and placid most of the time, it can become a raging torrent, cutting and deepening its rocky channel. The beauty and grandeur of these great walls fill the visitor with feelings of peace and reverence. The names bestowed by early pioneers upon its natural features reflect similar emotions. The Three Patriarchs, Temple of Sinawava, Angel's Landing. Rustic Zion Lodge nestles on the valley floor. Nearby is the pleasant quarter-mile Emerald Pool Trail. It crosses the Virgin River and reaches the overhanging cliff face where seeping water flows from above, creating a year-round source of enjoyment. Giant rock walls tower above Upper Emerald Pool. One of the most strenuous and popular trails in the park is the Narrows. The Virgin River winds its way through a narrow cleft in the canyon walls. Much of the 16-mile one-way trip involves wading through the river. Because this route may be hazardous, check at the Visitor Center for current weather conditions. Zion receives 10 to 20 inches of precipitation annually, but sudden thunderstorms can bring a deluge that turns trickling streams into torrents and changes the usually gentle flowing Virgin into a river of roaring, churning force. Seven miles north of the south entrance is the Temple of Sinawava and the 150-foot-high pulpit. The Great White Throne looms 2,000 feet above the river. Towers of the Virgin and the West Temple dominate the southern part of Zion Valley. The East Rim and Hidden Canyon trails offers panoramic views of the canyon. Fluted sandstone formations along Hidden Canyon Trail have been created by erosion. There is a wide variety of wildlife found here. Desert and plateau habitats harbor more than 270 species of birds and a smaller but interesting mix of mammals. Leaving the Valley of Zion, the scenic highway to the east leads upwards to the Zion Tunnel. Canyon Overlook offers magnificent views of the canyon. Near the east entrance, cone-shaped checkerboard mesa is composed almost entirely of white Navajo sandstone. North of Zion, Cedar Breaks National Monument is carved into the 10,300-foot western rim of the Markagant Plateau. Here is a gigantic multicolored amphitheater, 2,500 feet deep and 3 miles from rim to rim. Although similar to Bryce, it has a character and beauty all its own. Bryce Canyon National Park is located along the eastern edge of the Paunsaugunt Plateau and is one of the world's geological masterpieces. Bryce Canyon is not really a canyon at all, but a series of spectacular amphitheaters carved by erosion over eons of time. Its complex formations of brightly colored spires, pinnacles, and canyon walls are eroded from an ancient lakebed. At an average of 8,500 feet, it is only slightly lower than Cedar Breaks. From Rainbow Point near the southern end of the 21-mile-long Rim Drive, a panoramic view extends to the north and east. Nearby at Yovimpa Point, the enduring bristlecone pine is found. Unlike other pines, it retains its needles for decades, and in time of drought produces no new growth. Some of these trees have survived for over 1,600 years. There are many fine overlooks along the rim. At Agua Canyon Viewpoint, nature has carved a remarkable series of pinnacles. The Natural Bridge, 125 feet above the gully below, is a formation that always catches the visitor's eye. The meadows and forests of the plateau support an exceptionally diverse group of wildlife, including mule deer, pronghorn, and elk. Bryce Canyon National Park, located higher, is younger than Zion, and geologically speaking, softer, accounting for more rapid erosion. Bryce Point, with its outstanding view, lets the visitors see the result of this rapid erosion in a scene that is one of the most popular in the park. A number of important trails originate at Bryce Point. These include the Peekaboo Trail, offering a spectacular view of Bryce Point from below. Sunset Point provides an opportunity to observe a virtual sea of formations of all sizes and shapes. Many, such as the sinking ship, are aptly named. The Navajo Trail begins here with what seems like an endless series of switchbacks. Delightfully imaginative names describe Thor's Hammer and the Windows. To fully comprehend the delicate beauty of Bryce, it is necessary to get down below the rim and look up. It is only then that the visitor becomes truly aware of the exquisite beauty of this wild and colorful area. This is one of the jewels of our national parks. Leaving Bryce, on Scenic Highway 12 you enter Red Canyon and the Dixie National Forest. Red Canyon is often referred to as Little Bryce because of its impressive weather-carved formations. The infamous outlaw Butch Cassidy had his hideout in Red Canyon. Dixie National Forest is the largest national forest in Utah, occupying nearly 2 million acres. It has great scenic beauty and numerous public recreational opportunities. Utah's scenic Highway 12 is one of the West's foremost drives, with vast panoramas of slick rock and red-hued canyons carved by the Escalante River. This road provides access to several small towns rich in pioneer heritage, as well as Escalante Petrified Forest State Park, Calf Creek Recreation Area, and Anasazi Indian Village State Park. The highway also runs for over 60 miles along the northern boundary of one of our nation's newest parklands, Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument is a dramatic multi-hued landscape rich in natural and human history. It is managed by the Bureau of Land Management and is larger by far than Bryce, Zion, and Capitol Reef National Parks combined. The monument is a masterpiece of diversity. 1,000-year-old pinyon and junipers can be found in this region, as well as prehistoric dwellings, ancient rock art, a world-class fossil trove, and hundreds of living species of birds, mammals, and reptiles. The Grand Staircase portion of the monument's name comes from a series of great geological steps. This grand staircase of multicolored cliffs spans 5 different life zones, from arid desert to coniferous forests. Before journeying into the park's remote interior, be sure to stop in at one of the several visitor centers surrounding the monument. Within the monument are the canyons of the Escalante, a magical labyrinth of water and stone. Here, the Escalante River winds through a 1,000-mile maze of interconnected canyons. One of the more popular hiking destinations in the canyons is Lower Calf Creek Falls. The sprawling monument includes other well-known points of interest and rare rock formations, such as Kodachrome Basin and Grosvenor Arch, a giant double arch found at the north end of the Coxcomb Formation. Heading east, scenic Highway 12 winds onward towards the next grand adventure. To the northeast, Capitol Reef National Park is a largely undiscovered treasure of America's national park system. It is a land of surprising, sometimes incredible contrasts. Its unusual name was arrived at a century ago because of the rounded grayish-white domes resembling the U.S. Capitol Dome. Reef is a nautical term that is used to describe a barrier to passage, which Capitol Reef certainly is. This dome is the best known in the park, perhaps because its name is Capitol Dome. The Great Wall of Capitol Reef, rising up from the valley floor, acted as a barrier to early pioneers. But there is much more to the park than the reef itself. In the midst of this arid vastness, where the Fremont River and Sulphur Creek meet, there is an oasis of green orchards and farmlands. A century ago, Mormon families settled here, built farms, planted crops, and established the town of Fruita. The last residents moved away in the 1960s. It is now preserved and maintained by the National Park Service. Most visitor activity is located along Highway 24, which is the main access road. The highway meets and follows the Fremont River. More than 1,000 years ago, the earliest people arrived here traveling through these same canyons. They settled on the banks of the Fremont River. These Indians planted crops such as drought-resistant maize along the river and lived in pit houses in the rocky hills above their fields. Although they built no elaborate cliff dwellings like their Pueblo and neighbors, they left behind evidence of their skills. Remarkable rock art or petroglyphs depict broad-shouldered people with headdresses, necklaces, and shields. The 1-mile-long trail to Hickman Bridge climaxes with a soaring curve of rock highlighted against the backdrop of giant domes. South of the visitor center, the park's scenic drive runs along the multicolored face of Capitol Reef. Capitol Gorge, at one time, was the only state roadway across central Utah. Today, the road is gone, but the gorge remains popular and exhibits numerous water pockets. Grand Wash is a deep slash in a cliff just off the scenic drive. It is marked by a long, narrow gorge with giant sandstone walls that are honeycombed by thousands of years of erosion. This unusual formation is called the Castle. North of Highway 24 is surreal Cathedral Valley, with its church-like spires soaring 500 feet into the sky. Strike Valley and the Great Water Pocket Fold is an extraordinary geological feature, a 100-mile-long rock backbone of which Capitol Reef is only a small part. The Burr Trail Road is one of the most spectacular in the park, offering breathtaking views of Strike Valley. Here at Capitol Reef, we are in the heart of canyon country. To the northeast of Capitol Reef is mysterious Goblin Valley. It is the home of thousands of Erie and Trotta sandstone sculptures. They appear in endless forms of fantastic creatures and haunting shapes. Goblin Valley is indeed the right name for this unusual geological showcase. Farther east along the Grand Circle route are the petroglyphs of remote San Rafael Reef. Everyone who views them are astounded by their size and the skill of the unknown artists who created them. Dead Horse Point State Park offers one of the most spectacular visitor viewpoints in the United States. It overlooks the Colorado River, 2,000 feet below, and hundreds of square miles of highly colored mountains, canyons, and gorges. To the south lies nearby Canyonlands National Park. A trip down the Colorado River through Canyonlands is a true wilderness experience. Remote and rugged, like a journey back in time, the scenery as much as it was when John Wesley Powell explored the Colorado and Green Rivers over 100 years earlier. Today on the river, the bustle of civilization still seems so very far away. Canoe and raft trips are the most popular means of exploring here, originating from nearby Moab. Larger jet boats also provide downriver transportation and pickup service for canoers, rafters, and their equipment. Despite the strong current, the river is placid and beautiful. Fiery red walls ascend on all sides. Wind and weather-carved formations stand watch, like sentinels from an age-old legacy. The distant formation here was named by John Wesley Powell, the Buttes of the Cross. River runners stop along the way to inspect an ancient Indian ruin. Visitors are awestruck by the evidence of those who lived here. These wild sites are fragile and invaluable. Please, don't disturb any artifacts that you see. The 527 square mile Canyonlands National Park has literally been created by the mighty Colorado and Green Rivers. They have carved it into 3 districts. One, the island in the sky, lies between the 2 rivers. The Needles district lies to the east of the Colorado River, while to the west of both rivers lies the Maze, the most isolated area. These river gorges have been created over 150 million years, with the rivers slowly gouging their way deeper into the rock strata of the plateau. Canyonlands is a red rock landscape. Incredible rock formations are everywhere, with only a spattering of plant life visible to the visitor. An unpaved road cuts sharply up the cliff face of Schaefer Canyon, leading eventually to the Island in the Sky Mesa. The mesa is the remnant of a high plateau carved away by the rivers. Musselman Arch is one of the highlights of the White Rim Road that circles the mesa. Mesa Arch frames the distant LaSalle Mountains. Superb views are found all along the rim, including the well-known Green River Overlook. Grand View Overlook is the most spectacular and popular viewpoint with visitors. Nowhere else can one grasp so quickly the park's formidable topography. From Murphy Point, the visitor is able to obtain a distant view of the maze. Leaving the island in the sky, every turn brings new vistas. There are many ways to see Canyonlands. One is by four-wheel drive roads. But however you get there, Needles is geologically distinctive and scenically inspiring. It is appropriately named for the sharp-pointed spires that are its most prominent features. Angel Arch is one of the most beautiful and distinctive arches in Utah. It well deserves its status as the symbol of Canyonlands. This giant pothole arch has the right name, Paul Bunyan's Potty. The first primitive humans arrived in Canyonlands about 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. Other cultures followed, but they all vanished, leaving behind a record of their passing, with these ruins and prehistoric Indian rock art. Priceless pictographs such as these are painted on the rock surface using mineral dyes, indicative of the skilled artisans who created these fragile treasures. In Canyonlands, the spectacular is commonplace, and the unique is everyday. Arches National Park lies at the very heart of the famed Red Rock country of southeastern Utah. It covers over 76,000 acres of semi-desert terrain and contains more natural stone arches than any other area of the country. The park road leads the visitor first to an area with sheer walls known as Park Avenue, resembling a city street with tall buildings. Southeast of the park, the LaSalle Mountains reach an elevation of over 12,000 feet. Northeast of Park Avenue is the Courthouse Towers. All of the formations and arches are the remains of an ancient mesa that has eroded away. The Three Gossips. Sheeprock. Many of the park's startling rock sculptures are aptly named. Courthouse Wash may seem like an insignificant stream, but at times it has flowed with the fury of a flash flood. There are countless spires, pinnacles, and rocks of unique form that are popular with visitors, one of which is Balanced Rock. Its total height is 128 feet, of which the huge Balanced Rock is 55 feet. Its estimated weight would approximate 1,600 automobiles. Marvelous Double Arch is 163 feet in length and 105 feet in height, the second largest arch in the park. Distinctive Turret Arch, set amidst the splendid background of the LaSalle Mountains, has 3 separate openings. Here, nature has created 2 arches side by side. They are the North Window and South Window, collectively referred to as the Spectacles. the fanciful Eye of the Whale. The fiery furnace is a maze of fins, spires, and narrow passageways. It was named for the warm reddish glow of its Entrada sandstone in the late afternoon sun. Skyline Arch rises alongside the main park road. Devil's Garden lies at the end of the park road. Many arches are found in the scenic area, including Broken Arch, Pine Tree Arch. Landscape Arch is one of the great arches of the world. At an incredible 306 feet, it is the world's longest. There is Wall Arch, Partition Arch, and Double O Arch. The Dark Angel overlooks Salt Valley. The Wolf family cabin reminds us of the first known white settlers in Arches. Delicate Arch may well be the most famous natural span in the world. Its delicate, rare beauty is reflected in its name, that has become the symbol of the park. To some, the park may seem just a land of strange and exotic landforms, but there is much more. Arches is a land of many rare qualities. The rocks of Newspaper Rock State Park have recorded 2,000 years of human history. Petroglyphs pecked into the desert varnish on Wingate sandstone depict and record prehistoric peoples, more recent Indian tribes, and even early explorers. Southwest of Arches National Park is Natural Bridges National Monument. Its major features are 3 immense natural bridges and significant Indian ruins. Excellent trails lead to each bridge. The first bridge, Sipapu, is the largest of the 3, measuring 220 feet in height. It has a span of 268 feet and is 53 feet thick. Natural bridges are categorized as young, mature, and old. Sipapu is a mature bridge. Another trail leads the visitor past ancient ruins. In prehistoric times, the plateau was occupied by early Puebloan cliff dwellers. They built their homes and shelters under the massive cliffs for protection. About 700 years ago, a climatic change occurred, and it may have forced the Puebloans to abandon their dwellings and leave the region. These people were later followed by the Ute and Paiute Indians. Kachina Bridge is categorized as a young bridge. It measures 210 feet in height with a span of 206 feet. Natural bridges are eroded by running water, whereas natural arches are created by other erosive forces. Owachomo is a fragile old bridge, nearing its inevitable collapse. It is only 9 feet thick, and yet, amazingly, it has a span of 180 feet. Scenic Highway 261 is a connecting link between natural bridges and the Valley of the Gods to the south. The 17-mile trip to Valley of the Gods is an adventure that no one should miss. Easily driven, it features outstanding sandstone sculptures and is a photographer's paradise. Near the Grand Circle route, Muley Point offers spectacular views of boundless areas of canyon country. The canyon rim at Gooseneck State Park provides a perfect view of the odd series of goosenecks on the San Juan River, 1,000 feet below. These sweeping switchbacks cause the river to flow nearly 6 miles to make 1 mile of headway westward. Many people travel through the town of Mexican Hat, but few realize that its name is derived from the near-perfect natural sculpture of a Mexican hat. Hovenweep National Monument is located on the Utah-Colorado border. It is comprised of 6 separate groups of ruins scattered within the canyons and mesas of the park. They are the ancient ruins of the pre-Columbian Pueblo Indians and were built about 1200 A.D. The rocky terrain was well suited for the massive amounts of building that was completed, such as these twin towers. The remarkable ruins are a tribute to the builders' masonry skills, which included castles, towers, irrigation dams, cliff dwellings, and pueblos. A visit to these ruins is a step back in time to another era, where human survival depended upon their resourcefulness and the whims of nature. These skilled people abandoned their pueblos sometime around 1300 A.D., probably for the same reason that their neighbors, the Puebloans of Mesa Verde, abandoned theirs at about the same time. Mesa Verde National Park in southwest Colorado is a vast system of deep canyons and isolated mesas. Early man first inhabited the mesa tops and then the canyons. They eventually evolved into a unique civilization. Today, a modern roadway transports visitors to the grand pueblos under the cliffs. About 10,000 years ago, early hunters roamed the Colorado Plateau region. Then, about AD 550, a people known as the Modified Basket Makers built permanent, semi-underground pit houses. They were simple structures made of poles and logs and covered with juniper bark and mud. Beginning about AD 750, their descendants built surface structures on the mesa tops. Several centuries later, other Puebloans built Farview House, one of the larger mesa-top villages. Water, though seldom plentiful, played an important role in the life of the early Puebloans. Mummy Lake, a man-made reservoir, collected water from runoff. The earliest pit houses consisted of a large chamber, dug several feet into the ground, and a smaller antechamber. Later, the Puebloans built kivas, which were underground religious chambers. AD 750 saw the beginning of pueblo construction. Coyote House, AD 1050, offers evidence of the transition from small villages to larger towns. By AD 1150, some of the Pueblo people began to move under the canyon rims, and by AD 1200, construction of the large cliff dwellings was underway. Spruce Tree House is the third largest and best preserved of these spectacular Pueblo villages. At 86 feet, Square Tower House ruin is the tallest in the park. The Puebloans may have moved under the cliffs for protection against some feared enemy, or perhaps as shelter against the elements. At one time, 5,000 people may have lived in the pueblos of Mesa Verde. In December 1888, Richard Wetherill and Charlie Mason came upon the ruins of Cliff Palace, among the largest cliff dwellings in North America. In 1891, a young Swedish scientist, Gustaf Nordenskjöld, introduced the Wetherills to systematic archaeology and record-keeping. This led to the establishing of Mesa Verde National Park in 1906. Popular Balcony House was built on a high, easily defended ledge. A 3-foot-high wall was thought to be built to keep youngsters from toppling over the cliff. Longhouse, as its name implies, is a long dwelling and is the second largest ruin in Mesa Verde. Never completed, the Sun Temple was the peak of the golden age of the Pueblo culture. Suddenly, for no certain reason, it was over. The early Puebloans vanished, leaving their great cities under the cliffs to slowly crumble away. Now, partially restored by the National Park Service, they stand as a glorious monument to these incredibly talented people. East of Mesa Verde National Park, Durango-Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad recaptures a more recent piece of American heritage. Completed in 1882, the railroad was built primarily to transport ore from Silverton area mines to a smelter at Durango. This is the most scenic railroad found in all of Colorado. A trip on this iron horse between Silverton or Durango is an experience you will never forget. The stretch of track known as High Line is the greatest thrill on your journey and one of the most exciting in all of railroading. Some passengers still shrink away from the canyon sides and its straight down drop to the Animas River. The Durango-Silverton Railroad is indeed a link to America's Wild West heritage, a rolling journey back in time. In the Navajo country of eastern Arizona, the sheer sandstone walls of Canyon de Chelly National Monument hold the empty ruins of an ancient civilization. The enormous canyon walls rise thousands of feet above, while below, meandering waters flow. The canyon's south rim and north rim drives take in a total of 12 overlooks, providing fine views of the canyons and ruins below. Special tours led by Navajo guides can take you on an exciting adventure. Guides explain the history of the canyon's ancient people and the Navajos who live and farm here today. The Puebloan people occupied Canyon de Chelly for almost 1,000 years, and then they too vanished in the 13th century. The seasons are striking at Canyon de Chelly, and none more so than the first storm of winter. With the sun's return, the beauty of winter at Canyon de Chelly is revealed in all its glory. Located within the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, Lake Powell, with nearly 2,000 miles of shoreline, is one of the largest man-made lakes in the world. It is named for John Wesley Powell, whose expeditions brought him here in 1869. It offers a wide variety of recreation, plus some of the most magnificent lakeside scenery found anywhere. All of this is due to the presence of massive Glen Canyon Dam, which harnesses the wild Colorado River. There are several excellent marinas on the lake, including Waweep, set amid huge rock formations in Waweep Bay. It was founded by river pioneers Art Green and his family. Boating is the only practical way to explore the vast watery world of Lake Powell. Whether it be on an open beach or a secluded cove, camping out on the lake shore is an enjoyable experience. And of course, the water skiing and wakeboarding can't be beat. There's great fishing, too, and all kinds of watercraft. Also, there is another exciting sport here, parasailing. For those without their own watercraft, a variety of adventurous boat tours are available. Entering Padre Bay, a visitor is immediately struck by the towering buttes that ring the shore. A number of scenes from major movies have been made here, including The Greatest Story Ever Told. From the air, Lake Powell visitors can see Rainbow Bridge, the largest natural bridge in the world. The Navajo call it the Rainbow of Stone and consider it a sacred place. Until recently, it was one of the most remote and inaccessible regions in the contiguous United States. Today, because of Lake Powell, it is accessible by boat. Now protected by the National Park Service as a national monument, this giant bridge arches to a height of 290 feet and has a span of 275 feet wide. There is no better and more exciting way to see the ever-changing panoramas of Lake Powell, Monument Valley, and portions of the Grand Canyon than by air. Scenic air tours of this region are offered from the Page Airport at Lake Powell and from Goulding's Trading Post in Monument Valley. Located on the Utah-Arizona border, Monument Valley has some of the most photogenic landscapes in the world. A trip through this wondrous place leaves you with a treasure of never-to-be-forgotten memories. Guided tours begin here at Goulding's Trading Post. Monument Valley was established as a tribal park in 1958 by the Navajo Tribal Council. It is one of nature's most artistic creations. Carved red sandstone buttes, Slender sky-reaching spires and monoliths bear names like the Totem Pole, the Three Sisters, and Rooster Rock. Weather-carved spires loom tall above the valley floor. Three austere columns point skyward. They are the Three Sisters. Here the stately totem pole and the yebiche stand as sentinels. The yebiche resemble the real dancers that appear at a religious Navajo ceremony. The totem pole stands 32 stories high, yet is hardly thicker than an elevator shaft. The warm-colored sand dunes are found in many areas of Monument Valley. But when the storm winds blow and the sand moves, it is symmetry in motion. Sand Springs, although surrounded by dunes, provides the best water supply in the valley. North Window offers another grand vista. But this is the land of the Navajo, and has been for many generations. They learned agriculture from the Puebloans and acquired livestock from the Spaniards. They adopted a pastoral way of life that many still follow today, not living in villages or towns, but in scattered family camps. They are a proud and determined people that follow their traditions and family ties. Small, abandoned masonry structures dotting the cliffs and canyons of Monument Valley tell of the first people to occupy this country. They were the early Puebloans, or Ancient Ones. For over 1,000 years, these simple farmers planted fields of beans, squash, and corn, supplemented with wild plants and game. Then about 1250 AD, they too disappeared. To most, Monument Valley is a place that defies description, but you will never forget it. Navajo National Monument has three of the largest and most intricate of known cliff dwellings. They represent a version of the prehistoric Pueblo culture at its peak in the 13th century. Keat Seal Ruin was discovered by Richard Wetherill in 1893. It is the largest cliff ruin in Arizona and one of the last to be abandoned. Keat Seal has 160 rooms and 6 kivas, or ceremonial chambers, and fills a giant alcove in a Navajo sandstone cliff. Betacam, which means hillside house, is a 700-year-old, well-preserved apartment house. It is set in another large opening in a sandstone cliff and contains 135 rooms. As is the case with other Puebloan people in the Southwest, they too disappeared around the end of the 13th century. Pipe Spring National Monument lies in the northwest corner of Arizona. It was declared a national monument by President Harding in 1923 to commemorate the struggle for exploration and settlement of the Southwest. Its centerpiece is the old stone fort at Pipe Spring, built by Mormon pioneers in the 1860s. It was built to protect settlers in the region from Indian uprisings. Today, visitors will enjoy this pleasant oasis and reminisce about those distant times through interpretive exhibits offered here. The Petrified Forest National Park contains one of the world's largest concentrations of petrified wood. However, this is entirely a fallen forest. Huge logs of stone and countless broken chunks are strewn about on the ground in vast profusion. Spectacular areas of the Painted Desert are also within the park boundaries. The climate and the landscape here today are greatly different from those of the distant past when these trees originally grew. About 225 million years ago, this was a broad tropical basin. As the massive trees died and fell, shifting streams covered them with mud. Chemical reactions within the trees slowly turned them to quartz crystals, often duplicating the original wood pattern in perfect detail. The entire process of turning wood logs into stone may have taken a comparatively short time. The petrified forest area was occupied by early peoples for a period of nearly 10,000 years. Evidence of their presence is found in many forms throughout the park. Newspaper rock is a huge block of sandstone on which these people recorded their passing with rock art. Agate House is a partially restored Indian pueblo. This building is made up of chunks of petrified wood originally cemented together with clay. Farther south at Jasper Forest, banded cliffs rise above a broad plain strewn with petrified logs. Without question, many of these logs roll down from the mesa top or from its eroding face. Those that haven't yet tumbled to the desert floor will do so eventually as successive rains undermine and loosen them. Long logs break eventually into shorter sections, short sections into fragments. Even the solid rock of petrified wood crumbles into colorful gravel sooner or later. At the edge of the 8,500-foot Kaibab Plateau is the isolated north rim of the Grand Canyon. Although visitation here is small, when compared to the south rim, the grandeur and beauty is just as overwhelming. There are many spectacular overlooks along the north rim, but Bright Angel Point and the area near the lodge is the center of visitor activity. At the undiscovered side of the canyon, a refreshing new dimension awaits the visitor with tall pines, lush meadows, abundant wildlife, and a slower pace. At the rim's edge, the limestone is over 225 million years old, but down in the canyon's inner gorge, the dark walls are more than 2 billion years old. Cape Royal is the name of the tip of a long plateau that juts far out into the canyon. It is a popular spot with visitors. At Point Imperial, the most conspicuous landmark is Mount Hayden, shaped like a thumb. It is composed of hard sandstone. Historic Grand Canyon Lodge offers one of the most dramatic settings of any hotel in the world, perched on the very rim of the vast gorge. Each year, millions of people come to visit the most astonishing landscape in the world, the Grand Canyon. As much as a mile deep, 277 miles long, and up to 18 miles across, its breathtaking beauty and scope leave most visitors inspired and overwhelmed. About 65 million years ago, forces within the earth uplifted this area. As the land rose, the raging Colorado River began the long process of erosion that formed this enormous canyon. Today, the river continues its work while also providing thrills for adventurous rafters. A favorite way to reach the canyon is on the Grand Canyon Railway. The journey begins at Williams, traveling 65 miles to the Grand Canyon. The journey ends at the world-famous El Tovar Hotel. The El Tovar is located in the village, the center of visitor activity. The Hopi House forms the background for presentations by authentic Hopi dancers. The visitor center is also found here. One of the more popular adventures is the mule trip to the bottom of the gorge to Phantom Ranch. Duck on a Rock is one of an infinite variety of rock shapes and forms found in the canyon. Near the east entrance, the watchtower gives us a final grand view of the Grand Canyon. The Southwest Grand Circle beckons to those who find joy in travel, in making new discoveries, and exploring new paths. From the tallest mountain plateau to the deepest canyon gorge, from wandering rivers to quiet vistas with wisping winds, this is a land to refresh the spirit.